Hello and welcome back to Conversational, the podcast. I am very, very excited to introduce our guest today. He is a filmmaker, writer, director, and producer with some very prestigious awards to his name, and a man who has given me some sleepless nights over the last few weeks. Please welcome Babak Anvari.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No
So,
problem at all. I wanted to say as well, obviously, we were just chatting before we started the record, but I wanted to save this for on the podcast. I watched Under the Shadow last night and I was absolutely terrified. I'm not joking. I could not sleep last night.
yes, that's music in my ears. That's exactly what I was
I,
looking.
I I wish I were joking about that. I genuinely think it was the scariest film I've ever seen in my life. But we will come back to that. We will
Yeah.
come back to that. Before we get into the questions and into your life and childhood and filmography, if I had to ask you to describe yourself and what you do in 60 seconds, how would you do that?
I am a filmmaker who is in love with storytelling and have always been in love with storytelling, especially through a visual medium. And I love stories that have tension in it because drama is all about tension. Is that good enough?
That's great. That's perfect. You did it under 60 seconds. And
Great.
we always start off with the same icebreaker question because as I was explaining to you, we're focused on communication on this podcast. And one thing that we like to do before we get into the details is we like to find out how our guests answer questions and how they justify themselves. So the first question that we always ask is who would be your five dream dinner guests? And they can be living, dead, they can be fictional or real. Who would you go for?
Okay. Wow. Fictional or real? I didn't know that. But I'll go Steven Spielberg, Tim Burton, uh, David Lynch, um, Carl Gustav Jung, because I'm obsessed with him, and
Okay.
probably Barack Obama because I find him to be the most approachable politician, in recent history at least. So that's five. I mean, I can go. There are more and more people that I would love to sit, like Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, or
Yeah.
David Fincher. But like, I'll stop at that.
Okay, so you've gone for three directors there, a
Yeah.
psychologist, and well, obviously Barack Obama, the former president. What's the obviously I can understand the directors. I assume they're big influences on your work. You spoke a bit about Obama, but why Young?
Jung, I'm a massive fan of his theories. I've been a massive fan of his theories since I was a teenager. But when I was a teenager, I couldn't really fully understand his books. So only recently I've been like devouring his ideas. The thing is that like as a storyteller, um, I think you'll find a lot of storytellers who have love for Jung because I found my way into Jung through the brilliant Joseph Campbell, which I don't know if you know. He was he wrote this brilliant book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. I have to check the title. That is basis of like the idea is that like mythology for all around the world sort of have the same patterns, and that's because they come from like sort of like a collective unconscious. And Joseph Campbell, we had to study it at uni and for screenwriting, and through that I realized that he was obsessed with Jung, and that there was an overlap there. And I love Jung's theory that like basically as a psychologist he had this belief that the inner world is as valid as the outer world, as the external world, and they're kind of connected, which I love that idea, but that's just like really simplifying his complex sort of thoughts and theories. So yeah, that's why in a nutshell. Yeah.
I think if we were going into the details rather than simplifying it, we could be here all day just talking about Jung. Hey.
Definitely. And the effect, like he's always obsessed about the effect of fairy tales and myths on like collective psychology and personal psychology, which as a storyteller is fascinating because I love like part of my job is to work with the language of symbols and allegory, and so there's like a huge overlap there. Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely see that in some of your work, which we'll obviously come back to later. But it's interesting you refer to yourself as a storyteller. Is that the word that the predominant word that you'd use to describe yourself?
I do because filmmaking is a form of storytelling. I mean, film, TV. So it just falls into that category. And I specifically, I love watching documentaries, but my obsession has always been fiction.
Mm.
So yeah, like that's why I call myself a storyteller because, very early on as a child, I was like thinking that if I can't make it as a filmmaker, maybe I get into comics, like become like a comic book creator. Sadly, I don't draw that well, so but that again, that was like as a child, I was obsessed with Tintin, the comics.
Yeah.
So it was always like for me, it was like how can I tell stories through visual medium, like through images. But film was always first. Film and animation. Yeah.
Well, you sort of answered the classic question, haven't you, of what would you be doing if it weren't for your current job? So that's very helpful.
Honestly, I think I would have loved to become a comic book writer. Maybe one day I will try it because in the world of comics, you can write a comic and get someone else to illustrate it. You
Mm,
don't necessarily have to. I mean, some of the biggest comic book creators, like Alan Moore, who I love, he's predominantly a writer. He doesn't
mm.
illustrate his own comics, but at this, I mean, honestly, recently, now that I've like sort of at my age, I've recently also thought like, oh, if I somehow like everything goes wrong with the filmmaking career, maybe I do become like a psychologist or psychoanalyst. But that means another 10 years of studying again. So I don't know if I'm up for that, but who knows? Maybe when I retire.
Well,
Uh,
it certainly seems like a lot of fun. I have a I don't know if I'll be allowed to say this, but I'll check with him before this goes out. I have a friend of mine whose father was very successful in the grape trade. He was the predominant supplier of grapes to Tesco's or something along those lines, and he invented the candy floss grapes or the cotton candy grapes. And then after 20, 30 years of doing it, he gave it all up and making great money. He gave it all up to become a psychologist because he was just so fascinated by the human condition, I suppose.
I mean, it is fascinating. It's complex, and there's no simple answer. And I think this is why everyone gravitates towards
Mm,
it. And we're all like, you look at people like, I don't know if you have siblings, but like people growing up under one ceiling, each become their own. I mean, there are like some sort of familial patterns, but
mm.
like each one of those siblings become their own characters. So, it's not like just the environment can create one type of person. Yeah.
I'm so glad you raised that point because I'm the oldest of six. So
Oh,
I
wow.
yeah, I've very much seen every single one of us growing up in our own different ways, and some of them are still quite young, so we're yet to find out what they're going to do. But yes,
Yeah.
it's certainly interesting to find that out. But let me take it all the way back to the start now, if that's
Sure.
okay with you.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I get this right. So you were born in Iran in the 1980s and lived the first years of your life in the middle of the war between Iran and Iraq, which you subsequently said, and I absolutely love this quote because I think it absolutely defines a lot of your work. You said you were being afraid of being left alone and of being in the dark for too long, which I
Yeah.
think is one of the scariest quotes I've ever heard. Do you think it's possible that if you hadn't grown up in these circumstances, that you might be directing a different type of film right now? You know, you might be a comedy director.
Rom-coms.
Yeah.
Um, I think so. And it's so funny because some people who have those sort of type of fears in their childhood or traumas, they tend to avoid horror films or any
Mm,
type of like stories or films that like give them anxiety. But I'm the opposite. I actually I find it cathartic. I always say I'm someone with a lot of anxieties myself and lot of like sort of irrational fears. But I found that like if I inflicted that on other people through my stories, just fine. I mean, just becoming friends with your own sort of fears and demons. I think for me, it's the way forward. Yeah.
And I think you said as well, I read an interview where you said that you think a lot of those anxieties were passed down through the generations, or from your mother in particular. That's fascinating to me.
I think, look, I mean, Under the Shadow, my first film was like, pretty much the inspiration behind it was like, it started from a conversation I had with my mom. And, because, just like, uh, the father in the film, my dad's a doctor. He was a young doctor during the war. So he had to go and serve, every year for a month. And my mom was, I was asking my mom why am I such a wimp? As like get scared so easily, but and I have these irrational fears. And my mom's theory was, oh, during those months that your dad was away, I was so anxious on my own, even though I was really trying hard to be a protective mother. I think maybe unconsciously, I sort of passed on some of those anxieties and fears on to you and my older brother. Um, and I was like, this is so fascinating to explore in a story. And I thought the best way to explore it was through the genre of horror.
Mm.
That's how Under the Shadow came about. Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, I think I do think it's quite a brave choice because I know that a lot of directors and storytellers, they like to sort of get their foot in the door first, I suppose, and then make the projects that they're passionate about. But it seems that you've just gone straight in. I want to make these types of films. I want to make films that are true to me, and do that straight out of the gate, which is amazing, really.
No, thank you. I mean, to be honest with you, that for me was always the other way around. I was like, my first film needs to be my passion
Mm,
project and something that I deeply care about because making films are difficult. Making your first film is 100 times more difficult
mm,
because you need to convince people to trust you. So I knew that like for that to happen, I need to be just so passionate about the story that I would be like you know, like just thinking that rejections are out of question. Like, I have to just be tenacious and keep at it. That
amazing.
was my reasoning. Yeah,
Yeah. It
yeah,
takes a lot of bravery, I think, to tell that story, especially one that's so deeply personal to you. And
yeah.
speaking of which, do you have like a sort of defining moment that you remember growing up that sort of defined those early years of your life?
Well, it's so funny for me. It was the opposite because when I was born, it was right after the revolution in
Mm,
Iran, and there was a war going on, and the exposure to like the wider world was like only through like bootleg sort of tapes. Like films would arrive in Iran like a year or two late after release, and they were all like bootleg. But I think that when the war ended in the early 90s, I clearly remember like having, which it was illegal, but like people started having these satellite dishes that like sort of open up the world for us. Like,
mm,
we started getting like MTV Asia and like started watching like sort of British and American shows and that for me, especially as someone who's already obsessed with film and TV, was like like just like opening my horizons and like MTV, like the sort of early 90s MTV had like a massive influence on me. And it's sad. I don't think MTV is like what it used to be, but in the 90s, it was genuinely revolutionary. And I even remember as a child in Tehran when we first got MTV and I was like devouring it. I was like, one day I'm gonna go and work for MTV, and guess what happened? I did. I did end up working for MTV for 8 years after I left Iran and moved here. Yeah, I worked for MTV UK. So sometimes it's like be careful what you wish for. I mean, not be careful because I that was an amazing experience.
Well,
But yeah,
eight years is a long time. I wasn't. I saw. Am I right in thinking you worked on some interesting reality TV shows at MTV?
yes, I did. And when I first joined MTV, there was still every time you meet someone who worked at MTV, it was like, oh, it was the last generation that like, before it became uncool. I genuinely think I was like near the very end because when I joined, it we still had music television under the logo, and we're still making music related content. And I was lucky. I joined as a video editor, but then ended up being part of this gang who started making this show called MTV Live Sessions. And we started in a tiny studio, then became bigger, which was like bringing artists in, and then it wasn't really live. We would bring in artists in the studio and they perform. We do 2 or 3 takes, and then we go and edit it. And we did some of like some huge artists. Like I think Lady Gaga is like one of her very first sort of TV appearances in the UK. I directed that for MTV Live Session, and that was
Wow.
before she was like massive. She did Just Dance. Just Dance just came out. So it was really fun, but then suddenly MTV decided that they should outsource all of that because they're not making enough money and focus more on reality TV shows. And that's when my job became a little bit more sort of uninteresting. And
Mm.
there were points that I was sitting there that I would be like editing stuff for reality TV shows. And I know reality TV it has a huge fan base, but I wasn't one of them. So I was like, I would be there thinking, I didn't go to film school for this. And like there were a few incidents that I kept thinking I didn't go to film school for this. So that also pushed me to then think about what I really wanted to do. I know I'm not like speaking chronologically, I'm jumping.
That's quite all right. I'll do my best to bring it around as much as I can. It's such a far cry from the content that you're putting out these days, isn't it? Really, reality TV. I mean, that must have been a huge jump. One of the points that I really wanted to touch on actually, which is sort of unrelated to MTV, but is related to what you just said, where you mentioned film school, and I wondered if there was a reason why you chose London for film school.
So when the time finally came for me to sort of leave the nest, so to speak, um, you know, uh, I love I love British culture. I love London, and we have relatives here. So it was like the best option for me. And I came here and went to film school here, University of Westminster, and there was always like an idea that eventually I'd move to America, and I still have one foot in America because me and my producing partner and I have a production company, Two and Two. He's in LA, I'm here. But I just can't. I just love Britain so much, and I love London so much. I just haven't. Honestly, I like. I travel to so many cities every time. I'm like, there's no city like London. It genuinely isn't.
It's so hard to appreciate when you live in it as well. I mean, I'm born and raised in London, but I uh, I recently went out with a friend of mine who is from Milton Keynes, and he's lived in London for a year. And we were walking through Green Park, a group of us, and we were rushing through trying to get to the train. And he suddenly stopped and said, "Wow, that's Buckingham Palace." And I thought to myself, "Yeah, I haven't even noticed it,"
Oh, I mean,
because you're
this
just
is the
launching
thing.
through.
You walk around the city, the amount of history this city offers,
Mm,
it's unbelievable. And yeah, you take it for granted, and it's such a cultural city. It's rare to find a city that a lot of the museums are free,
mm,
again people take for granted. It's very cosmopolitan. It's so funny because it has such a rich history, but at the same time, if you wanna research any culture, you can have access to those cultures in London. So it's like the most fascinating city ever, and you never get bored here, in my personal opinion.
no, no, I agree. And you've also got the best place in the world, which is the BFI South Bank.
Exactly. I love that place.
Did
Yeah.
you find it? Did you find it quite a welcoming city when you first came?
I did. I was like immediately, well, there is the thing. It's so funny. I was talking to one of my best friends, Kit Fraser, who I did Q&A with
Hmm.
at Hallow
Yep.
Road, who's also my DP. So I met Kit when we were 18, like literally at uni, and we were talking about this that like I think the bonus thing, which is like, thank you, mom and dad. When I arrived here, I was fluent in English. I mean, obviously, I'm so much better. I think that really helped. So I only found it welcoming, like immediately just clicked with people and I had my friendship groups, friends who, like the other day were like, oh my God, we've been friends for 23 years and like, they're like my family here now. And so I did find it a very welcoming city and like everywhere in the world, there are lovely people. They're also nasty people, like, but my general, that's everywhere. But yeah. I remember from the very moment I arrived, like and I was like, oh, this is an amazing place. And when I went to uni, yeah, that first week was like, this is life. Like, just being a hostel residence. But I think any 18-year-old suddenly becoming like independent, they go like,
Getting a bit of freedom, go off the rails.
exactly, yeah.
What sort of British TV and films had you sort of consumed by that point to
Um,
make you fall in love with the culture?
I mean, I was obsessed with Agatha Christie when I was growing up, and Conan Doyle, and as you can tell from my sort of like my way of thinking, and like sort of, I grew up like devouring sort of 90s Miss Marple show and Poirot, different Sherlock Holmes sort of adaptations. Like the sort of famous sort of murder mystery whodunit
Mm.
that comes from this culture was like my obsession as a teenager. And also all the Gothic tales. I mean, like Frankenstein and Dracula and yeah, honestly, that was like one of my fascination when I first came to the UK and to London. It was like this is the birthplace of some of the Gothic dark tales that I like grew up loving. So and you still see it like I mean even Hollywood films have this obsession about like like Big Ben, full moon,
Yeah.
ding, like fog, and like that's just such a London image, and Jack the Ripper, all these myths around London,
Mm.
and so yeah, that was like my dark side was like even before arriving here was like so excited about that, like
Yeah,
yeah.
it's one sort of area of London that seemed to persist through the generations, the dark gothic sort of horror stuff. And even today you have people like Mark Gatiss, who's a huge fan of you, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
He's
kind of,
he
yeah.
still makes a ghost story for Christmas every year on
No.
Boxing Day or Christmas Eve, I think it is. And there's still an obsession with the macabre, isn't there?
Oh, for sure. And like because there's so many I think there's been an obsession with the macabre in this culture for generations. I mean, M.R. James, for instance, like I'm a
Mm.
massive fan of his ghost stories. And sort of this idea of like it's not like also it's just there's so much texture in those stories. It's not just about boohoo. It's
Yeah.
like they really creep you out and they make you question reality and like and as you can tell from my films, I have a fascination with that sort of the macabre and the fantastical world. I was talking to Mark Kermode, and he always he keeps bringing this up that I do I love having one foot in the real world, one foot in the fantastical world, and see London seems to be the best place for it historically.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that in a lot of your work, can't you? And I'm keen to obviously try and keep that at bay for a second while we're kind of in this area. But I wanted to tell you actually, sort of on a similar vein, about a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine actually, who has very similar roots to you actually, but he's a Zoroastrian. He's one of very few Zoroastrians in this country right now, and he's 25 years old. So he's trying to kind of make sure one of his goals at the moment is trying to make sure that that religion survives and kind of persists and that sort of thing. But the other goal that he has is he's also just started making short horror films,
Yeah.
and he's been quite inspired by some of your work. So I reached out to him before doing this, and I asked him if he had any questions for you. And one of the questions that he really wanted to ask you, and I've got a couple that he's going to pop in with on my list of questions at some point later. But the one that he wanted to ask you the most was, how do you think that we can make, as a kind of society, as an industry, how can we make horror more inclusive of different backgrounds and different parts of history? Because it's clearly something that's quite important to you. But how can the wider community do that?
The beauty of horror, it's almost like, sci-fi is similar, is that you can use like metaphors without being on the nose. Like in every story, the horror represents something else. Most, it's just like it's a representation of something else, and I think being aware of that is key. And I do think the way to do it for for it to not for it to reach out to a wider audience is to find stories and tell the stories in a way that are universal. What I mean, for instance, was Under the Shadow for me was like, it's a classic haunted house tale, but rather than being set in Victorian sort of era in England, I took that, put it in like an apartment block in the middle of like 80s Tehran, Iran during the Iran-Iraq War. And it focuses on a relationship between a mother and child. It's about family. So again, immediately, you don't need to be specifically from Tehran to understand that dynamic.
Mm.
It's just a universal theme. So I think using these sort of tropes and sort of universal ideas can really help that you can maintain sort of like your own specific background whilst like opening it up to the wider world, if that makes sense in your story. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I personally have a bit of a theory that, for me, foreign language films, particularly horror, are often scarier than in your own language, because there's also added that sense of, they could be saying anything. That
I
you're the odd
know.
one out. So
Yeah.
that was an interesting decision to me, to, when you chose to present Under the Shadow in Farsi rather than English, given that all the
Oh,
rest of your movies are in English.
thank you. No, I had to fight for that one
Really?
because yeah, well, not with the producers who came on board, but like when I went around pitching it, I met like a dozen of producers in the UK and some like very well experienced ones, and they were like, "Is there any way you can make it in English?" And I was like, "No, for the sake of authenticity, I really want it to be in Farsi." And they were like, "It's too difficult, it's too risky for us to take it on board." And I was lucky to find the producers who that one of them is now my producing partner. We started a company together, Luke and Toe. They were as Luke and my producing partner says, they were the ones crazy enough to take on the challenge, and it worked. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll move on to some of your films now, because that's quite a nice turning point. But I mean, it must be, given that Under the Shadow was so successful for a first film in terms of the awards it was nominated for, and won as well, winning a BAFTA, I think, didn't it? Won you a BAFTA. That must feel quite strange as a first time feature filmmaker.
It was, and it was such a lovely sort of like pat on the shoulder, like
Mm.
it's like a welcoming gift. So no, it was really surreal, and especially because the story stemmed from such a personal place, it meant a lot that like you got all that attention, and and it opened a lot of doors for me. But before Under the Shadow, I made a short film called Two and Two, which, to be honest with you, that was like the stepping stone towards Under the Shadow because that's also in Farsi and it's
Mm.
but I shot it here, and that went to a number of festivals, and that got nominated for BAFTA as well, which got me my UK agent here who helped me find producers for Under the Shadow. So yeah, no, it was like a very surreal yet sort of yeah nice entry, into my filmmaking career. Yeah, if that makes sense.
I,
Yeah.
I actually watched two and two day
Oh,
before yesterday, and to me, it sort of serves as a bit of a prequel almost to Under the Shadow.
that's
It's for
yeah.
for anyone who hasn't seen it at home watching this video, I definitely recommend you watch it. It's only I think 8 minutes long, but it's the story of an all boys school who are told that 2 plus 2 does not equal 4 anymore; it equals 5, and obviously there's a message hidden in there somewhere for those of you who are smart enough to find it. Is it quite important to you to give some sort of message within your films? You know, how do you balance that between entertaining and sharing something you want to say?
I think not necessarily a message, but themes to explore that I
Mm,
find, like sometimes it's like even even like my own dilemmas and like things that I'm trying to wrap my head around myself. I like to just explore it through the medium of film and TV, or just storytelling in general. So I wouldn't, I never want to like preach or sort of be like, this is the message of the film. But I think having a central theme in any story is key. Whether it could be anything, whether it's like sort of familial, societal, political, emotional, about sort of human connection, blah blah blah. But like I think that becomes the heartbeat of your story, which then you can just build upon. So I think that's really it's always going to be important for me. The question is, what is the story really about? I think for any storyteller, that should be the heartbeat. What is it about?
yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose that's the difference between just making a film for the sake of making a film and earning your living and actually being a storyteller and telling the story that you want to tell. Yeah, so.
I guess so. Yeah, yeah. Because it is important, and culture is civilization has been built upon stories. So
Mm.
stories are really important. You cannot dismiss them. They're almost sacred. So, and for me, they are, and I think any story, because especially when it comes to film, there's so much. It's so much effort to make a film happen. It's almost like a miracle every film that happens because
Mm.
it starts with an idea, but then you have to like convince people to invest in it so you can hire an army almost like to help you bring it to life. So there's a lot of like moving pieces. I don't want to take that lightly. So it's a lot of work. So every time I'm telling a story, every time I'm making a film, I want to make sure that at least I really care about it. I had a lecturer at university who very wisely told me he used to be a filmmaker, sadly he passed away, but he used to tell me when I graduated and when I made Under the Shadow, he came to a screening of Under the Shadow and he sat me down and he was like, always remember, do one for you, one for them, meaning that one for you, like a story that you really care about, one for them, like to make a living, to pay the
Yeah.
bills. And I was like, oh, that's really wise. But at the same time, I think even the one for them needs to sort of have something that excites me thematically. I want to wake up thinking that, I'm making a fun film, but it still means a lot to me to create it. It's not just, you have film, there are filmmakers out there who just basically making films for the sake of like paycheck. So, and,
I
I
suppose, at some stage it probably gets hard to turn down if you're getting offered a certain amount for however much these Marvel films and that sort of thing are offering.
exactly. And some of those projects end up being like sort of it'd be very tough for a filmmaker to have like 100% control over because it's such an investment and already established franchise. So you have to do the dance and so it really depends on like what you're after. Sometimes it's great as a career move because you do that, then you have more options later. But then for some people, it's just not what they want to do. Like, they rather have full control all the time, but get paid less. It's like with any art form.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just to go back to Under the Shadow quickly, I wanted to explain because we've spoken about it quite a bit, but I realised we haven't quite given some context to the audience. So this was your debut film in 2016, and it tells the story of a family, a mother, a father who's leaves the scene quite quickly, but a mother and daughter predominantly, where the father goes off to assist in the battle. He's a doctor, and it's the story of a mother and daughter in an apartment block in Iran in the 1980s, during the War of the Cities, and they encounter some supernatural occurrences, shall we say, so as to not spoil it. That is kind of the basic plot. There's a lot more to it, and like I say, it kept me awake last night. I'll be honest, which is clearly the goal. It's also what appears to be, and I don't want to speak for you, but it appears to be your most popular or most successful film so far certainly in terms of the scores on apps like Rotten Tomatoes and Letterboxd, and in terms of the critical reception. So is that something that is reflected in your views? Are you happy with the way that turned out?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm over the moon that it did so well, and like it got all that attention. Uh, yeah, I mean, that's just a filmmaker's dream. I mean, it was made on a very low budget, so it wasn't like necessarily like sort of big payday, but it was never meant to be. It was meant to be my debut feature as an entry point.
Mm.
And so like getting all that praise was just like was phenomenal. And in some ways, I sometimes think that like um probably I don't know if I can ever get to that point. I have like that level of sort of control because filmmaking, there's an investment behind every film, and they're like Danny Boyle, I think, once said it so wisely. There's like the bigger the budget gets, the more of a dance you have to do, and that's true. So yeah, I am very to answer your question. Yeah, I'm like obviously very very pleased. But I love all of my films. And I'm very lucky. Hallow Road is getting a lot of praise
Mm.
as well. But yeah, um, you know, then you quickly learn as well that sometimes you can't satisfy everyone. Like, that's the thing about like when you share a story with a wider audience,
Mm.
you have to factor in different point of views, different tastes. So so you quickly learn that as well after a number of years in this industry that like again the focus should be I'm going to try my best to sort of protect my vision and tell the stories that I like and I that get me excited, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and I suppose that if you're happy with the final product, and everything else that comes after is just a bonus. I mean, I was doing some research. I found praise from hugely famous people. Mark Commode named you his best film of the year in 2016. I'm sure you know that already. And Mark Gatiss, who we spoke about earlier, and Edgar Wright, they came out and said how much they loved it. I even saw a YouTube comment, which I'm not 100% convinced wasn't by yourself because it's so scarily accurate, where they said it was just simple, as if war wasn't terror enough.
Oh
I
wow.
mean, that
It
is.
wasn't from me. That's amazing. I should-
I thought as soon as I read that, I thought, I bet he's written that himself because that is exactly what the film is about, isn't it?
Oh man, that should have gone on a poster. Uh,
Do you watch your films back and sort of pick out bits that you would have changed or anything like that, or once it's out, do you just never watch it again?
no, once it's out, I do watch. I love watching my own films with an audience. At least a few times. After a while, it gets, I was like, okay, I've seen it enough time. But no, it's a great learning experience just to watch it with an audience to see if the certain things that you had in mind, like the sort of gasps, the sort of chuckles, the
Mm.
uncomfortable sort of giggles, like if all that works, like so yeah, I do rewatch my films. And yeah, there's always like, the thing is that you never, someone was saying that like, you never finish a film. You simply have to just give it up because, time and money runs out. So there's always like room for improvement.
Mm.
Uh, so then you like, okay, how can I make it better next time? Like with another project, how can I avoid the mistakes I did on this one? So yeah, it's a on continuous sort of like I'm continuously learning, and I think that any day if I suddenly wake up and think I know it all now, like that's the day I should quit or die because we're all in this life on this journey of learning. It's
Mm.
constant learning. So I think yeah. So there's always something new to learn, especially within my industry. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I'm glad that you can rewatch Under the Shadow because I have to say I don't think I ever can rewatch that. After what you put me through last night, I was
Sorry.
towards the last 15, 20 minutes. Whew.
All right. Great. I love
What I
it.
loved as well is, and I don't want this whole interview to just be, me telling you how great you are, but what I loved was, it reminded me of the classic stories that we were speaking about earlier, M.R. James, that sort of thing, whereby there was a huge build-up where nothing supernatural really happens for quite a bit, and that's obviously you leaning into the truth of it rather than the fiction. So I wonder how you choose as a storyteller to balance the truth and the fiction. What's more important to you, or are they equally as important?
They're equally as important. And I think with Under the Shadow, the idea was always like when the film starts, you almost feel like it's like a sort of social realist movie about post-revolution
Mm,
Iran during the war, and then but gradually it shifts into uh, the horror genre and like becomes more expressionistic. I love doing that, and it was so key for me to make, and especially because for a lot of people around the world, it was like 80s Tehran is not a familiar place, so the key thing was to spend time to set up, set up the world like this Tehran in the 80s and also the characters because I always say like if you don't care about the character then you're not going on the journey with them. It's really sad because that was an independent film, we had the opportunity to be able to do that. Whereas like these days it's really tough because the expectation is that the audience don't have like you need to like be quicker with those things like with setting up the world you need to get straight into it because the audience don't have the patience or the
mm.
attention span, which is I think it's an error, but hey, I managed to do it well in that film, I think, because we had the opportunity as an independent film. Yeah.
Well, we are losing a bit of that with the TikTok generation, aren't we? Everything needs to be about sound bites and content clips and how quickly can you get into the view of the matter. And even things like trailers are now designed almost to tell you the whole story so that you can just get as many people in the cinema as possible. I think it's a real shame. It must be difficult for a filmmaker like yourself.
It's super difficult. I also don't understand trailers that like tell the whole story. And I was like, well, what's the point then going and watching the film if you know
Yeah.
exactly what's gonna happen? And there's still like genius filmmakers like Chris Nolan who maintains that level of mystery. When his films maintain that level of mystery. Like you watch a trailer of a Chris Nolan film, you don't necessarily know. But I think he's the last of his generation. People still uh go and watch his films because it's Chris Nolan. But like, yeah, it's becoming more and more difficult, and I think it's a real shame because if you don't have time, like I said, to set up the world and the characters, then how you gonna sort of go on the journey? And it's frustrating for me as a storyteller because that's my constant battle these days, like trying to convince the sort of financier people or the marketing team that like need to hold some of that back for the audience to enjoy the film as a
Mm.
whole. Like like you watch like some of the older like old films, like for instance James Cameron's Aliens. You pretty much don't see an alien until 40 minutes in. The first 40 minutes, I mean, there's tension, there's like sort of implied horror, but like first 40 minutes is just setting up the like what these characters are like, what the mission is and what these
Mm.
characters are like, who these characters are, and blah blah blah. So, I missed that. Genuinely missed that. And I recently one film that I thought again managed to do it so well as a blockbuster was Sinners. I thought did spend a good amount of time establishing the world and the characters before the sort of horror hit. Because
Yeah, that was fantastic, wasn't it? I think that will be certainly on people's lips for a while, and that's another great example of what you touched on with the Christopher Nolan thing, because I think a lot of people nowadays, with the movie star sort of dying out a little bit, the director star seems to be rising, which must be exciting for somebody like you. You know, when I hear new films come out, I hear people say all the time, "Shall we see the new Wes Anderson film?" You know, rather than the new Benicio del Toro film because he's the star. You know, so that must be quite exciting for someone like you to think that people might be going to see a film because your name is attached rather than because Tom Cruise is attached or whoever it may be.
no, but I think that's always been around, like auteur filmmakers throughout history, like like even like 20, 30 years ago, you would go and watch a Scorsese film,
Mm,
rather than just necessarily because it has Robert De Niro in it. I mean, usually it's for both reasons, but
yeah.
like I think filmmakers who end up becoming an auteur name, they become like the same level as like the star. And going back to Sinners, it's a perfect example. That film was such a success, both commercially and critically. It's a perfect example that when you tell a good story, audiences will show up and watch it. The problem is that it's always like the studios are backed by corporations. They always have this fear, or like they think what the audience want or need, and the battle is to always trying to tell them that like no, the audience not necessarily know what they need. You just need to the whole point is to show them what they need.
Mm,
Like because otherwise they wouldn't, if they already knew like what they wanted, they wouldn't show up because it was like I've seen this before. They want to experience new things. And I think, like trying your best to avoid the formula, which sadly it's so commonplace in our industry that like every time, like for instance, Get Out getting made, it was a famous story. That script went everywhere in Hollywood and everyone passed on it until it got suddenly made, became a success. Then everyone wanted to make the next Get Out.
mm.
It's like, don't try to like sort of like copy other films. Like always try to think like, what's the original? That's why like original stories are difficult to make these days because they're more risky because there's no established formula behind them.
Mm.
And the money people is like, how do we know if this is gonna work? It's like, well, that's the risk. Yeah.
That's the risk you take for great stories. You know, all of the best stories in history started somewhere, didn't they, as an original story? So, I mean, have you got any scripts floating around that people have passed up on that you're hoping to get made?
Oh yeah. If you ask any filmmaker, they had that experience of like, have a script, they want to get it made. I have received rejections. They're hoping that one day someone will show up to
Mm.
back it. I mean, it happened like almost on all of my films, but especially Under the Shadow, I told you like there were like a dozen of people who said no to me until finally this group of young producers came on board and managed to help me make it happen. So.
What was the feeling like that day? Did you leave that office and jump in the air?
It was weird because so when they came on board, they were like, we come on board if we can work with you for another year to develop it further. And I was like, 100% I'm in. So it wasn't like, because filmmaking is a journey. When they came on board, it was still like a matter of like, let's develop it. But they didn't have the money. They were like, we still need to go and hustle and find the money to make
Yeah.
it. So yeah, that year, as I was developing the script with them, they were like trying to figure out how to get the finance to make it happen. So that was a huge part of it. But I remember the day that my producer told me I was working at MTV and I kept telling him like, tell me when I can resign. Wait, let's wait for the money to come. And I remember the day that he finally emailed me and he's like, we're good to go. Yeah, I that was a sweet moment because I sent my letter of resignation at MTV. My boss was like, "Why are you leaving us?" I was like, "Going to make my first feature film." And, and she was like, "Well, that's a great excuse." So yeah,
Yeah. See you
yeah,
later. Best of luck.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah.
I noticed as well that one of the was one of the funding partners or the collaboration, the Doha Film Institute.
Yeah, so they contributed. It wasn't a lot of money, but they did support us at the beginning during that development period to get us going, and which really helped us. So yeah, Doha, but then the majority of the finance came independently through independent sources, and it wasn't a big budget film at all. It was like what you consider micro budget. But shooting in Jordan, because we faked Iran and Jordan,
Mm.
shooting in Jordan helped. Lovely crew there. So yeah, managed to make it in a very scrappy way, but it worked. Yeah.
Was there a temptation to film in Iran itself?
No, that was shut down very early on because I mean Iran has such a rich cinema on its own, but like for because of the subject matter and the way I wanted to tell the story, I knew there was no way we could film it in Iran.
Mm.
We would have been stopped and censored and all that jazz. So yeah, for the sake of it's so funny, strangely, for the sake of being more authentic. I realized it's better not to shoot it in Iran, because otherwise I had to like follow so many like rules, government rules in Iran to for them to give us permit. So yeah.
Well, we'll move on from Under the Shadow. So the film that you released after Under the Shadow was Wounds in 2019, and that was distributed by Hulu and Netflix, and you had some huge Hollywood stars in that one as well. I mean, how does it feel to handle some really massive Hollywood stars like that? Do you ever get imposter syndrome?
I
Considering it's only
think
your second film.
you do, and but then you start talking to lovely they're all creatives and they're all human beings, and then once you click and connect with them on the creative level, it's just makes it so much easier. But yeah, that second film was Baptism of Fire because I learned a lot, but it wasn't a pleasant experience on my end. So many things went wrong on it. But again, it's just like a learning curve. It's a film that I rather not reflect too much on because yeah, it was just one thing after another going wrong with it. But I think because was my second film, going from Under the Shadow and a very micro budget film to then go and film in America, with a Hollywood financier behind it, and yeah, it just taught me a lot, like how to navigate within a bigger world and how to deal with mistakes and yeah, like I said, baptism by fire. But I'm very glad it happened very early on in my
Mm.
career because I managed to get so much experience out of it. But yeah, it wasn't. It was a bumpy ride for me. Like
Mm.
you know,
I, I won't press too much on why
of
then in that
course.
case. It sounds like you don't want to talk too much about it, but it certainly sounds like at least, you use those experiences for a positive end to kind of learn from the what not to do, I suppose. The only other question that I had on Wounds, which is
Yeah.
more of a kind of question to do with the conception and the writing, because it was based on a novella, right, rather than your own original idea, and that must have been slightly different to Under the Shadow. How do you vary the approach between adapting and writing from scratch?
It really, yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you need to fall in love with the source material, which I did. And Nathan Ballingrud, who wrote the novella, is now a dear friend of mine and an amazing horror writer, genre writer. I urge everyone to go and read his stuff, and because he also understands human condition, but but his the worlds that he creates are so disturbing, and that's what I loved about the novella. Like it was just it's basically about like this lost soul who pretends that everything is fine in his life, but it's not. And So I love the source material, and I think because the source material was so rich, it really, and it's quite faithful to the. I mean, I was trying to be as faithful as possible to the original story, and I think Nathan felt, because I was sharing the script constantly with him, that I think he was happy. At least he told me he was happy. So I think because the source material was so rich and textured, it was so easy for me to adapt it into a movie, especially the characters. Uh, but yeah, going back, I mean, the thing I would say is as well, like especially for um all of the young people who have passions for any type of job, is that like yeah, mistakes are like bumpy rides sometimes are blessings because that's the only way you can learn from it. You can gain more experience and become more experienced and hardened and smarter and wiser. So you know, just don't be afraid of um, like things not working out all the time or certain journeys become bumpier than usual. Because when you look back, you just think it was a learning experience.
Well, I have to say, we always ask towards the end of the podcast, what our guests' advice for young people wanting to go into their career would be, and you've answered it already. I mean, that is pretty much perfect. So,
Put it at the
so
end as well.
yeah, we'll cut that in. We'll move on to the next on your filmography, 2022. I Came By,
Yeah.
starring Hugh Bonneville and George Mackay, and also a future as a Doctor Who fan, you also had a future Doctor Who companion in that one, Vada Seitu.
Right.
So yeah, as a Doctor Who fan, that was a nice surprise when I saw her pop up. So this is a Netflix original. This one, is it?
Yeah. But if funny enough, the journey of that film is very interesting. That was meant to be my second feature. I sort of after Under the Shadow, I set up with Film 4. Lovely Film 4. I can only say good things about Film 4 because genuinely, at least when I was working with them, they just care about filmmakers and storytelling, and they're always there to try to get the best out of, bring the best out of you. So I set up with Film 4, and but it took a while. The development on it took a while, and then the execs also changed during my time at Film 4. But again, the new exec who came on board, Ollie Madden, was just amazing. Like very supportive and very wise. So. It took a while. It took like 5 years to develop it. So in the midst of developing that, the opportunity to make my wounds came up. So I went off to do that. But then once I came back, we were going to we had an American partner, financier partner, because Film 4 doesn't fully finance any film. They only come up to a certain percentage. Because that's the way it is in the UK, especially the government funds. And so we had an American partner, and they were amazing as well. But learning from my second film, I wanted to maintain some level of control, and I had like very sort of like red lines that like creatively I didn't want to cross, like when it came to cast and this and that. And so the American partner, we very amicably sort of shook hands, and then Film 4 was like, we will be behind you, we can't fully finance it. So then we pitched it to Netflix, and Netflix offered to just take it. They were like, it can be a co-production, but it will take longer, or we can just take it on as an original and just fully finance it. And so it became a Netflix original, like very first film under Fiona Lamptey, the exec, the first UK film that they commissioned. Under her, she was there trying to start her own brand at Netflix, and that was the first film that they commissioned. And yeah, it ended up doing really well for it. I was number one for 3 weeks in the UK, um, and for yeah, working with all those lovely people was amazing. Film 4, even though it became a Netflix film, was always there throughout production and the edit, like supporting me. So it just felt like a real nice family and like people who had my back. And Hugh Bonneville and George Mackay, two of the best actors and loveliest human beings ever. And I really wanted Hugh Bonneville for the role of Hector Blake because he's so famous for like being in family films and comedies and Downton. And I was like, he'll be perfect because nobody expects him to be so dark. And I think he was very excited by the idea of like playing a very dark character. So yeah, I was just so blessed that he came on board and we got along so well. I like worked with him again, him and George and everyone on that cast like in a heartbeat again. So yeah, and yeah, the result was great for Netflix. For us, it did well in the UK and other territories as well. So that's how it came about. Sorry, I realized I
That's
rambled off.
no, no, no. That's fascinating. I mean, you're quite cheeky with the casting on that film, aren't you? You've got somebody who's known for being the loveliest man and being in Paddington and things like that, and then you also pulled a sort of Hitchcockian psycho twist of having somebody on the poster and first build, and then he's only in the first 45 minutes with George
Don't
Mackay. I
spoil
mean,
it. Don't spoil it.
sorry, we'll cut that out. But that was yeah. I mean, that is a remarkable twist. I was shocked by that. I mean, was that always the plan from the beginning in terms of the marketing of the movie?
100%. The twist, which I'm not gonna say what it is, was always the part of the pitch. It was like that Hitchcockian twist. It angered some people, but I was like, hey, it was the creative decision that we all made from the get-go. It's a matter of taste, but and I understand like people being like, whoa, what? It's like a rug gets pulled
Yeah.
from. But we all loved it, and we all thought that's the only way to tell this story. And Hugh Bonneville, I had a few people who say, "What did you do to our national treasure, the lovely Hugh Bonneville?" And I was like, "Well, he wanted to do it, so and honestly, he's like one of the greatest collaborators ever. We worked together to build that character and develop it even further. And he came up with some genius ideas. So yeah,
Well, you're building a bit of a roster of hugely famous stars working under you, aren't you? With Armie Hammer and Dakota Johnson and Hugh Bonneville and Kelly MacDonald and Rosamund Pike most recently as well. You got a bit of a troupe going on.
thank you. Yeah, it's lovely. And again, with actors, like I said, once you connect on the creative level, I think then the rest is just fun and game and sort of yeah, it becomes yeah, then it becomes fun. Yeah.
Well, before we talk about Hallow Road, which we briefly touched on there, one thing that you've sort of hinted at a few times is that you run your production company Two and Two as well, and they're involved in pretty much all of your films as a company, right? As well, not just yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like we 22. I mean, obviously, Under the Shadow was one of the producers of the like my producing partner was like part of Wigwam Films. They're no longer together, but like so he was part of Under the Shadow. I met him on Under the Shadow, and we became not only good friends but business partners, and started Two and Two together to not just make my films, but to help other voices and other filmmakers uh tell their stories. So yeah, that's we've now I forgot the number of films. We've now produced not just my films but other films. Recently we wrapped on Bassam Tariq's second film with Mahershala Ali in it, and he's in the edit now, which we're very excited about. So yeah, we do it. We try to do it all if we can.
One of the best actors in the world, he is, I think, Mahershala
Yeah,
Ali. I mean, what a
yeah,
star.
yeah.
And on the production side of things, I mean, how do you, if you're running the production company, do you ever have to think about the business side of things while your creative brain's on? Do you have sort of a compartment that you put the creative brain into and then put the business brain back on?
Yes, you have to sometimes. I mean, to be honest with you, well, first of all, I'm blessed that my producing partner is so good at that part and he's a genius. And So he looks after a lot of the business side of things, and I'm learning a lot from him. But there are a lot of times that obviously you just have to switch to the business mode rather than the creative mode. But I think with all films, even if you're not the production company or the producer, I always tell filmmakers they need to keep an eye on the business side of film because it's not filmmaking is one of those like art forms and mediums that is not just pure art because you need money to be able to make the films. So there is like there's a huge business sort of factor, financial side to filmmaking, and I think some of the best filmmakers are the ones that are also aware of that how to manage a budget and like how to not waste money on certain things and save it for other more important bits. And so with any film, I think you need to have that. For me as well, it's really important to have to sort of balance both creativity and finance and business because that's the and some of the best filmmakers in the world. Chris Nolan is famous for that. Like he gets big budgets, but he knows how to sort of spend them effectively. That ultimately helps his vision. So this is my advice as well. Like if you want to get into filmmaking, please like work on that side of your brain that like the business side of your brain. I mean not everyone like are like great at it, but at least having some basic knowledge will always help because that's a huge part of the industry. That's why it's called film industry,
Yeah, well, I think that's great advice, and watch my segue here because this is going to be a good one. One way to save money is by making a film shoot very short, like 17 days.
Like Hallow Road. Yes,
So,
sir.
Hallow Road took you 17 days to shoot. How is that even possible?
It was, I mean, the thing that really helped us was because it was in such a contained location, it's
Mm.
mostly in a car. That really helped us. And when we did Under the Shadow, that was 21 days, and now it's pretty low. And I was like always going around saying, I made a film in 21 days, and I did Hallow Road. I was like, oh, I broke my own record. It's like but films have been made that like over 48 hours or whatnot. But like the nature of like when you watch Hallow Road, it's very, there's huge amount of craft involved. So it's
Mm.
not like we just film two people in the car for like 2 hours and then when like so when that happens and you only have 17 days you need to really plan and planning is so key in filmmaking for filmmaking in general no matter the budget level but the lower your budget is the more you need to plan and prepare because that's you need to understand like where every single penny is going, like and time is money in filmmaking, literally like every day from the moment you start shooting to the end of the day, like it's just money is being like spent and you can't waste time. So yeah, it's all about that. Like time management and planning. It's
Well,
very
clearly, yeah. If you can get it down to 17 days, that's that's a great sign. And to explain again to the audience, Hallow Road is your latest film, 2025. It came out in was it May this year or April this year?
was premiered at South by Southwest in America March, but
Okay.
it came out in the UK, was released theatrically in May. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I saw it in May, and it tells the story of two parents who are called to help their daughter who's had an accident on the roadside, and pretty much the whole story is told in the front two seats of this car, which was fascinating to me. And actually, my first thought when I saw it was that actually it reminded me of a play. I
Yeah.
thought that it could have been in the theatre. So I suppose my question is have you ever considered, exploring different avenues of storytelling, such as, the theatre or even your own novel?
Oh, funny that you mentioned it. Under the Shadow is being adapted by Almeida in London to become a stage play with lovely writer Carmen Nass is adapting it as a play, and Nadia Latif is going to direct because I'm not a theater director, but it's in capable hands, and I'm like over the moon that it's going to go on stage. So yeah, that's happening. That's coming out next June in Almeida.
Wow. So
So
t 10 years after the original film as well, if
10
it's next
years
year. Yeah.
exactly.
I suppose my only question is why did it take so long?
Good question. I don't know. I guess we weren't thinking about it until when was it? Like a year ago that suddenly we're like, should we explore this? And then we pitched it to Almeida, and they were a big fan of the original film, and they were like they came on board, and with them we found the talented Carmen Ness to come on and like adapt it. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it just suddenly hit us. I was like, we should explore this about 2 years ago. Yeah, yeah.
I suppose as well to link Hallow Road back to some of your other films. I mean, the one thing that I've noticed across almost all of your stories is that sometimes or most of the time the scariest parts are actually the human
Yeah,
horror. You know,
yeah.
for me in Under the Shadow when she gets arrested for not wearing her head covering, and then in two and two, obviously that whole film is about human horror and you know certain pieces in Hallow Road that I won't spoil because it's a new film as well. That must be a deliberate choice and something that maybe stems from your childhood in terms of those anxieties.
Sure. I mean, like human beings and the way they behave can be a lot more scarier than anything supernatural. But I also have this theory. I always like again, like going back to my love for Jung, is that the line between psychology and sort of metaphysics is so thin that your actions can have like effects on your inner world, which then it's murky. Is it a psychological trauma, or are you experiencing something metaphysical, which is like something that I love exploring both like in Under the Shadow and in Hallow Road recently. I've sort of explored that, and it is like it's funny that you say it is like pretty much like a intense psychological drama, psychodrama even between the like a two-hander between this couple, well, three-hander with the voice of their daughter on the other end of the line. But I think what we really tried to do with Hallow Road, especially, was that make sure that it also it's very cinematic. So as you go through the psychological journey of these sort of anxious parents, you start like seeing that expressed visually and sound wise in the film. It gets stranger and stranger. You've seen it as we go deeper and deeper in the anxious psyche of this couple. So I think that's always fun for me to do as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first film of yours that I personally saw, so I wasn't expecting the sort of super. I think if I had seen the others before, I would have certainly expected it.
That's amazing. I love it. I always say there are clues for the audience to make their own interpretation. If you
Mhm.
sat through my Q&A, that was the thing. And with any weird, strange tale that happens, even true crime stuff, I think an element of ambiguity so that you make up your own mind for me is exciting. However, they like you all interpreted it, that's the correct way. Yeah.
I wanted to talk quickly about a pattern that I noticed in your filmmaking because there seems to be 3 years between every single one of your films: 2016, 2019, 2022, and now 2025. Is that how long it takes to make a film?
I mean, look, I always say to people, from the moment you start writing, you're lucky if the film gets made under 3 years, or like it's at minimum 2 years from the moment you start writing the script, minimum.
Wow.
Uh, when you get green light, you have pre-production, which is usually, depending on the budget, it's from a month to 3 or 4. Then you have the period of shoot. Then you have the edit and post-production, which on a bigger films, it's like sometimes takes a year and a half. So it takes a while. Like on an average medium film, it's like it takes a full year from like on a low budget indie, like on Hallow Road, for instance, it was like it kind of took a whole year for it from beginning to end, excluding development on the script. So yeah, it takes a while to make films.
Matt, yeah, you see that 17 days figure and you think, oh, they've bashed it out really quickly. It was probably filmed last month, but
No,
you've been hacking away at that for years.
edits and stuff that's the final rewrite of the film,
Mm.
so that takes a while, and the visual effects, color grade, sound design, all of that, it just, yeah,
It's
time.
amazing. And next up on your filmography, I've seen people pestering you about this for some time, so I won't ask anything you can't answer. But I understand that you're attached to a new Cloverfield sequel.
Yes, and well, I can't really, people have been asking me, they can't really say much about it because there's like so much secret around it,
Mm.
um if I say anything, I'll get killed.
You get clipped up and
Yeah,
strung up.
no. So yeah,
Well,
I cannot get into that sadly, but
no.
um, yeah, people seem to read it online and like keep asking me, but yeah, I can't get into it sadly.
Well, the only question I had on it was more about you than the series itself, in terms of how are you feeling about working on something that's already kind of an established universe, given that everything you've already done is you and your own sort of
Yeah.
conception.
I think there have been a number of projects that have been sort of offered over years that they've already been established franchises, and it was like, do you have a point of view? And I think the key things, some of them I had to sadly pass on because I was like, I cannot add anything to this world, you know. So I think for me the key thing with every like with projects like that, or like, do I have a point of view and do I have like a vision for it that, I can bring to the table? If not, then it's not for me, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
then
no,
you
totally.
pitch that, and then if they like it and if they think it can fit in that world and that franchise, then you know,
Then
then
why not?
you join the team. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is your filmography. I always like to end with some more quick fire questions. So we'll go into these a little bit. You can explain yourself, obviously, but these are sort of shorter questions that not quite as deep as asking you about your childhood and things like that. Although the first one is fairly sort of deep. It's as deep as you want to make it, I suppose. But in every good movie,
Mhm.
there seems to be a turning point there where somebody's life changes. So in The Matrix, it's when he decides what pill to take. In Harry Potter, it's when Hagrid kicks the door down and tells him he's a wizard. What would you say was the turning point of your life? When did your life change?
That was the turning point of my life. That's really tough. I think there've been so many turning points that I think maybe if I can think about one, was I think um the day we got the finance to make Under the Shadow, because finally I was like, I'm a professional filmmaker. This is my job now. It's not like I'm working elsewhere dreaming about becoming a filmmaker. I am now, I can say that I am a filmmaker. Like if anyone asks me what your job is, I can say that's how I make my living. And that's
Mm.
was the dream that I had ever since I was 10, 11 10.
To achieve the dream of a 10-year-old you, or a 10-year-old version of yourself is anyone's dream. I think the ultimate person that you need to make happy in life is your childhood self.
I would say it was only the beginning, because then it was just like genuinely a new journey.
Mm.
It was like kind of like Harry Potter moment that, okay, you're a wizard now, but that's only when the story starts.
You,
So,
you're a storyteller
so it
now.
was like, I'm still learning. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
We've also spoken about your different avenues. So obviously you're a producer, director, scriptwriter, all of the above. If I had to narrow you down to just one for the rest of your life, you could only just choose one road to go down. Which would you choose?
Just one of them.
Yep, you have to cut all the others out of your life.
And 100% director. Yeah. But it's difficult because I love to write some of my own materials, but I think I think I also collaborate with brilliant writers. So if like they put a gun to my head, I would like happily be like, okay, maybe I find a great collaborating writer and like, but yeah, so if I have to choose only one, it's like 100% director. Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you might say that. Next, what one singular piece of work are you most proud of? I think I know what you're going to say.
What, like out of all my,
Yep, out of all of your short films, films.
well, obviously I love the whole of them equally. You have your
Ah,
own children, so I can't really tell. But the most, again, going back to like the one that mostly that changed my life, I would say Under the Shadow. Yeah, because it was my debut. So yeah, and it opened all the doors. Yeah.
of course, yeah. Next, I have. If you had to remake one film, what would you choose, and how would you change it?
If I have to remake one film, I don't like necessarily remakes, but I was like thinking about it the other day that that film is such a shame. I shouldn't actually say that. No, it's so funny. Actually, I recently watched a film that I loved so much that I was like, I would remake it frame shot by shot exactly the same but in English. Which is a dumb idea because I was like, well then no, I should tell people to go and watch the original. But so I don't know. It's really tough because I don't necessarily advocate for remaking unless there's a reason behind it. But um, so I can't, yeah, like if you ever see me remaking a film, probably two reasons for it. A, I genuinely think I can give it a different point of view or a different angle, or they offer me a lot of money. But I have to do this. Like,
Can't
yeah,
turn it down.
yeah. But yeah, no, it's tough. It's really tough that question because I think there've been a few films that I was like, oh, if I would remake it, I would do it this way. But then I don't necessarily actively think about what films I would remake.
Hmm.
Sorry,
Okay.
no. That's
I think that's fair enough. We'll let you off. We'll let you off. What themes and ideas has horror as a genre yet to explore?
what themes and ideas is
Or is that something you're keeping secret for your next project?
probably I shouldn't say someone might nick it. I should
I've
keep it to
I've
myself.
given you a get out of jail free card there, haven't
Okay.
I? And to finish up, we like to move into the sort of communication skills that I was talking to you about, and kind of the theme of this podcast. So I have one final question on communication, and then I have a bit of a surprise segment that I always surprise our guests with. So firstly, just very simply, how important would you say the ability to communicate is in your industry and your career?
Oh, the whole industry, filmmaking is about communication. Like it's all about you have an idea, you have a vision, you need to be able to articulate it and communicate it with the team so that they can understand it and they can bring their own ideas to you and pitch them to you. So it's all through communication that you can make a film happen. Honestly, without that, it can't happen. Like you can never, and I know friends, this I'm being very honest with you. I have a few friends I like that I even went to film school with who now are not working within the film industry because they say, for instance, they don't like crowds or they don't like they're agoraphobes or they don't like dealing with people and they finally realize that like this industry is not right for them because it's constant interaction with different types of people. And it's so funny because obviously like a lot of creatives are very introverted. I'm sort of I think I am an introvert like but you need to learn very quickly how to be able to if you want to make it in this industry, you need to learn quickly how to work on that muscle to be able to sort of clearly communicate your ideas with others because unlike a painter or a writer that like a painter only has their own canvas or a novelist has his own typewriter or a computer you need to come up with an idea and then you need to be able to share it for your cinematographer, production designer, producer, financier, all of that to understand so that it can come and help you make the vision happen. So
Amazing.
It's so important. It just hinges so much on communication.
That's fascinating. I mean, you're probably the first person to answer that question who's talked about creating a culture of communication for other people to communicate as well, which is really interesting to me because I suppose you are working as part of a team when you're making a film, which is fascinating.
Right.
So,
It's one of those mediums and one of those art forms that, as I said earlier, you need a group of people. Even when you're making a short film, you're at least probably going to end up needing one or two person to
mm,
help you at some point. So you need other people to help you make your vision happen. And for that, when you have a lot of people to work with, you need to have that. You need to be able to communicate with them. So communication skills are so key.
fascinating. Well, now what I'm going to do for this last surprise segment, I'm going to strip away those communication skills. And what I want you to do is I'm going to ask you some questions here, and I want you, if possible, to answer with just one word.
Hmm.
So this is this one stumps people. So here we go. So we'll start off with what motivates you in one word.
Life,
What scares you?
life,
That's a great answer. What is the best thing about your career?
dreaming,
What is the hardest or the worst thing about your career?
hustling,
What's your biggest strength?
mm. um, daydreaming. Mm.
What's your biggest weakness?
Mm. I'll tell you why I'm like because I have a very complicated philosophical answer to that. I, uh, um, it's not one word, but what's the critical? Being too,
Hmm.
yeah. No, that's that. That I guess, but that means that could mean a lot of things.
Maybe if I have this right, maybe you could put a hyphen between self and critical.
Oh, okay, yeah, self-critical.
And
That's allowed.
yeah.
That's like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the last one word, which I recognize you may need two words for, but let's see. Who is your hero?
Who's my hero?
You can have two if you need a first name and a surname.
Uh, changes a lot. Um, can I say that? Two
Yeah.
words? Changes a lot.
Or changeable. as
Change,
well.
I guess, yeah.
Well, that is the end of the one word answers. You did far better than a lot of our guests do. You seem to have a lot of them on the tip of your tongue. So these last two questions you can answer with more than one word. You'll be relieved to hear. What is next for you? What's coming up next?
Oh, I have few projects. I'm like co-writing a project. I have a script that's written by another brilliant writer who I'm really hoping to get off the ground. As a filmmaker, you always have to, I have a TV show that I'm developing with Sony UK. So as a filmmaker, I always say you need like a few things in the pipeline because things fall apart, things don't happen, like so I think that's key. So it depends which one, the universe sort of allow me to make.
Which one the universe pushes through the wormhole next?
Exactly. And I just have to just trust that but just keep trying. Yeah.
Fair enough. And the very last question, you've given us some wonderful pieces of advice for our watchers and listeners, but I want to know what the one piece of advice that you wish someone had given you when you were younger is. Let's leave our audience with something to think about.
Genuinely believe it when someone tells you that sometimes bumpy journeys lead to more experience and more wisdom. Because when you're young, you just think these are like BS words that like grown-ups tell you. Like if you can convince a young person to really honestly understand it and believe it, that's key. And like one quickly related to this, the reason you when you said like what's my biggest weakness, I was like it's tough to answer one question. Is that I have a lot of weaknesses, but I think those are the things that can help you sort of learn a lot about yourself. Weaknesses are not necessarily enemies. Like they can actually be like forces that drive you through life. And you can learn a lot from them. So this is why I was like struggling. I was like, I wouldn't call it a weakness. I would call it like maybe some a lot of times they're like motivational points, if that makes sense. It's like, why
Yeah.
am I weak in this? Maybe I should understand it. Either learn to be better at it or then accept it and realize why I'm weak at it. So it's all interconnected. So I wanted to connect that with I don't know if that's
No,
enough.
absolutely. I mean, you're a wonderfully philosophical man, and we've
Oh,
come full circle, really. We started off by talking about Jung and his kind of theories and ideas on the world, and we've ended it with yours. So, I mean, I don't think we could have chosen a nicer place to end. We've left our audience with something to think about. And with that, all I have to say is thank you so much for your time today. I recognize we've been chatting for quite a while, but it's been amazing. I think I could have asked you 100 more questions, but obviously we can't take up too much of your time as a busy man. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed answering some of my detailed questions today. And for the audience, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Thank you.